I like owning a dog 20% of the time.
That's a lot of the time.
Is it? Does
Not
it feel
at all.
like?
That's not even a little bit.
Okay, because 80% of the
like
time.
it's someone else's commitment. Is that what happened?
Yeah. Oh man, you're good. See that? You are a smart lady. I had my daughter and my wife really, really wanted one. I enjoy it when I have nothing going on, because then I can walk the dog. Everything's fine. But guess what? I never have nothing going on.
Right.
And I'm not 9 to 5. My schedule is like yours, is all over the place.
You end up being the babysitter because you're the only one here, right?
So then and then I have a show. I got to leave for the show. Sometimes if it's like a corporate gig, I'm just all decked out in a suit and stuff. Like, the dog didn't poop. It didn't poop. It's not that it didn't walk. It didn't poop all day. So now my entire life revolves around something. It revolves around a dog's butt.
Yeah.
My whole life.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, and I just still didn't leave yet, I'm like, I'm running late now because of your butt.
Do you say words like cauliflower?
I always say poop.
Broccoli.
Oh, did you think that
hummus?
Would that work?
I don't know. I was just wondering.
Everything, you're just making me hungry. Now we're rolling. Okay. Say hello and introduce yourself to the people.
Hello. My name is Mona Aburmishan. What up?
Folks, you heard Mona quite a ways back. You were a guest with some comedy producers and that was fantastic. But now you get her all to yourself. Yay. Comedian extraordinaire. You're kind of a producer in a way, because now you have things going on, because you gave me the wonderful Shimmy Isaacs.
Yes.
And you were booking her.
Yeah, I was actually managing her in a way.
This is crazy. So you have a lot going on besides just the funny. There's you're into the funny business.
Amen. That's right. Yeah. I mean, when you end up making other people laugh long enough and you start picking up the pattern, you catch it, and you perform all over the world, you're like, how can I be of service? Wow. And especially in this business, which is very lonely, very scary. It really is. That's why not a lot of comedians live long. There's a lot that goes on backstage that creates the funny. So I've always been a proponent, especially as a Chicagoan, of service. How can I help you? And also the Chicago style method is what's being mimicked around the world.
What do you mean by that? The Chicago style method?
Just like our architecture, just like our urban planning. So I have a master's in urban planning. So our design of comedy, which is a hybrid of East Coast, West Coast. East Coast, heavy significance and philosophy. West Coast, zany animation, acting out, stuff like that, with this hybrid of intelligent, funny, with the black, tough overcoat is globally what's being mimicked. You're seeing that.
That is fascinating, because I'm starting to see that in every aspect. When I meet actors, when I meet singers, when I meet anybody from this town, I notice that it has all that in every aspect of entertainment.
Yeah.
And then there's another layer too. There's kind of there's a toughness which you can get from like an East Coast.
Yeah.
But then there's also a little bit of the chill, like friendly vibe.
Yeah.
Because they're mean over there. They're very mean.
They are. And I think it's because the Midwest vibe of like, we can take ourselves seriously if we want, or we just be sitting in our house pouting because we have, 30 inches of snow. Otherwise, you're like, just shovel it. Like right. And I always tell people, I'm like, even with New Yorkers, I'm like, I feel like Jersey's kind of like a cousin. Philly's like a cousin, because I'm head to head with New York. I'm like, New York, New York, in the end of the day, we're always going to outwin you. And they're like, what? Like, who says that? And I said, because we got alleys, bro. They're like, what? I'm like, where do you put your trash, son? You put it on the front. We don't need to look at it. So see how weird I get?
Yes, but I got to tell you, this is true, because my first time visiting there, I did the walk. I walked from Central Park to Battery Park. So I got to see all the different neighborhoods. And once you even get to Madison Avenue, it's like, oh, this is where, Jerry Seinfeld shops. Yeah. He's rich.
Yeah.
Garbage in the street. Oh. Right in front of the nicest Pretty Woman building, there's garbage. Yeah, it's really interesting.
And I actually had a long conversation at 1 a.m. with one of the heads of the streets and sanitation. And I was like, wow, it's beautiful what you do. He's like, wait, what? I'm like, yeah, no, you clean the streets like that. You add to the beauty and the ambiance of a city that has their trash out front. And then he's like, well, thank you. And he's like, but not all parts of New York get this kind of treatment, because where I was located, I was like in the financial district. I'm like, I hear you. And you ever been to Chicago? He's like, no. He's like, you know what we got? And it was like I was enticing him with some new drug or something. I'm like, what we got in Chicago? They're like, what? I said, we got an alley. This guy's like, now he's probably 60 years old, been with Streets and Sanitation, said 25 years. He's like, what's an alley?
No, he was.
He did.
Did he?
So I stood with him at 1 a.m. and I said, you see how the city block over here is here? You see how the other one is over here? Imagine something right through the middle where all the trash, like your ass, could come out the back.
With me.
They're like, he's like, that's brilliant. I'm like, I know. See, the silliness. And he's like, I love you. I'm like, I love you too, man. And I'm in touch with this Streets and Sanitation worker, which is one of the beautiful things about being a comedian is yet you are like, you're a low-key roving reporter, right? And because we talk about life, like I always tell a lot of these young comics, I beg you, and I teach comedy, and I say, please, the one thing, do not watch other comedians. The greats didn't study other comedians all day long. They studied humanity. And you'll always have a long career when you're studying humanity. And every comedian has like a 10-year zeitgeist or over, like kind of a turnover. And if you do it right and you allow yourself to have some level of healing off stage, a lot of us deal with a lot of stuff personally, because it's almost like once you release the genie out of the bottle, once you see, like, as they say, woke, when you're awake and you can see the little idiosyncrasies of humanity, and it can actually come off as a little disturbing. But if you can have a personal way of like releasing and healing and meditating and still taking on this journey of really committing to making other people laugh, that you have a long life. Like some of the old comedians, they were performing up until their 90s.
Yeah.
You know, like one of my gold standards is Don Rickles. That guy was old. He could make fun of a mobster and the president on the same stage and a housewife in Vegas. Right?
Yes.
Where now we're kind of like walking on this treacherous, you can't say the word the in the wrong way.
Right.
Right? And I'm like, nah, I'm a comic. What are you going to do? I got the mic. Come get me. You know, like.
I'm so glad you feel that way, because it's getting nasty out there, because people want something. Just, you know, I heard a rumor. I don't know if it's true, but I heard that like Chris Rock and Jerry Seinfeld refused to do colleges. I just heard that somewhere. I don't know if it's true, because the person who was mentioning it to me said that they said people there are just waiting to complain about something. They're
it's the
waiting.
What About Me Too movement.
Yeah.
What about me? Like, what about me? Like, I'm in the wheelchair blind, left-handed, only eat, I don't know, organic cauliflower association. What about Me Too movement?
Right.
And that's how it feels. And it's like, everybody calm down.
Yeah.
You just spent 20 minutes fighting between Kleenex and tissue. Listen, just blow your nose and let's go on to the next thing.
Unfortunately, it seems, and I've talked about this on the show before, like, social media, the whole giving everybody a voice has made everybody like these spoiled little whiny brats, you know. And I think what the problem is, they're not professional entertainers, so they don't have a good reason to be heard. It's not like they're releasing a movie. It's not like they have a new bit that they can introduce.
Yes.
So they have a platform.
Right.
So if you got a platform and you're not a professional, then you got to find whatever you can to be, you know, to say something.
Yes.
You know, so it seems like complain, whine. I mean, it's so funny, because if you were face to face with any of these people, they wouldn't be that nasty with you.
Yeah. Or
You know?
could you actually be face to face with half of their face covered in collagen? And sometimes I'm like, do you think a Kardashian could look me right in the eye, or is their eye a little off?
That's true.
Right? They look great.
It might be floating in whatever.
I'm like, hey, honey, how are you? You good? I'm over here. You know, coming in for landing right here. Two of the eyes right here. Don't look at the chest. Yeah, and I find, so because I study humanity and I study history, like I'm a big proponent of history, and a lot of folks now, young ones, are really suffering from the narcissus effect of just staring at themselves so much. They're not looking at history. And if you look at history, you can just see kind of the pattern. And like I was saying, how we're kind of coming out of the light movement, which is a lot of people really love this intimate connection we have now. Like, I'm not going to be the same this week because of this face-to-face conversation. Me feeling heard, me having a platform that you gave me, and me talking to someone that I respect and I've respected for a long time.
Oh, thank you.
And that respected a comedian that was from South Africa. And if you knew Shimmy's story before she got here and what's been going on with Shimmy since, you would understand the impact that you have, and all the dots connect, all the little dots connect. And so I find it really rather either a large chess game that Source is playing, or I find it ironic how the Kardashian name went from being a man who was representing one thing, died of thyroid cancer, right? The throat, of all the cancers.
Huh.
And then his name is associated with an empire that, like you said, has a platform, but what are they saying? And now is kind of going into justice reform, this beautiful circle, which is like, what's going on? And so in alignment with what you're saying is people are utilizing these platforms, not because they just want to be heard, but they want to be heard because they want to get paid.
Oh, yeah, that's changing now, too.
Right?
Right. Well, and then what do you think of that? Like, 'cause there's the one side of the people that want to get paid and they are getting paid, which kind of sucks because they're not getting paid for any talent or any like good contribution to the world. You know, they're getting paid for dumping the garbage in the street. Is what they're getting paid to do, you know. But then there's the other people that can't get paid for it, but they wanna emulate that. They want that. They want to be that. And so the best they can do is just be little turds as well, you know, because they're watching the big turds.
I think that's where our Gen X falls.
Uh-huh.
Our age group has seen such a beautiful, horrific transition of humanity. Remember, you're in our generation. Especially me, in 1986, in April. Hey guys, let's get all the kids together. We're going to bring them, and we're going to bring a TV into the classroom because there's a teacher that's going up into space.
Yeah.
And that exploded in our face.
Right.
Okay? We saw the wall come down with Berlin and that power. And then we're part of a community and an environment where we're having walls go up left and right. Right? It seems as if our generation has watched society tell us if you do something right, you end up getting killed. Right? The only two people that were really powerful social activists that died a healthy death, just like a normal human, was Mother Teresa, Nelson Mandela. Everyone else was probably slain, right? But if you do right, you're probably going to get killed. If you do wrong, you're going to get away with it, right?
Well, especially now.
Right? So that's why our community is like, hold on. So you mean to tell me that this random chick is making all this money on YouTube because all she's doing is eating a hamburger? And I'm out there doing these nonprofit fundraisers and I'm raising money for orphans in Greece, but these guys don't want to buy my ticket there. And in the Chicago scene, I've had to pull myself off the market because I'm actually affecting the economy and the economics of comedy. When they give a host $50 for 4 hours of work and I got a master's degree and I speak 3 languages, I'm the idiot if I take the work.
Oh, wow.
You see? But there's that component of like, okay, where is my worth? If I can make a room full of people from all over the world laugh and in unison feel good. I mean, comedy clubs are becoming the modern day church. We've whitewashed our society so much to be scared of spirituality and put religious institutions juxtaposed to one another. Like, how many school shootings happen in Muslim schools?
No.
Right. Jewish schools, Christian schools, but they're happening in secular schools. And then we're blaming Muslims, I happen to be Muslim, for being so violent. It's like, wait, time out, coach.
Oh, that's interesting. There's a perspective I've never heard.
Right?
Yeah.
And then you sit around, you watch that stuff. You're like, I'm so observant and I love connecting, especially with a Gen Xer that can keep it real, but they can also have a podcast.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying you got to sit there and write notes, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to carve in stone because I'm so old.
Yeah.
No, it's when you and I, let's say you and I go out dancing, I probably can dance 4 hours longer as some of these young kids because I've been dancing house music for a long time.
Right.
Right? So there's that, like, the way we've been able to maintain our health, well-being, and in order, like, who are we going to be as old folks with our young? As the young is growing up, you know, like we were always going like, Gramps, he's still racist, or grandma, you know, like you still think we need that security. Oh, honey, when are you going to get married? Are we going to be like that with our young? And I sense we're not. Like, especially like your generation, my generation, we're going to have tattoos. We're going to remember the old times. We're like, man, we had that Harley. Like, we're going to remember those cool things that I think our young generation is going to look forward to getting older with us.
Yeah, it's weird because I'm starting to see it. Folks in our generation seem to be still curious, and we're still curious with what's coming out and with what's new, yet we keep the old school sensibility. And because of that, I think it's kind of stopping us from totally, you know, standing still. Like, sure, there's a time where, you know, I'm going to buy a pair of shoes and my 10-year-old daughter's going to be like, oh God, please don't. Like, yeah, that's going to happen.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll miss the clothing thing after a while. Maybe that's what's going to happen. Like, oh, Liz, what year are you dressing in? I could see that. But I mean, as far as things in general, I think a lot of the bigger factors and more important things, I think we're fascinated by it. So we're not standing still the way maybe some of our grandparents, they just stayed.
Yeah. Because they were, the thing I often watch is I watch the baby boomer generation. The baby boomer generation was raised by the Depression era.
Yeah.
So the baby boomer generation became very greedy, hoarding, and because they thought money equaled safety.
Yeah.
And our generation and the young ones, the millennials, people coming out of college right now, they could care less about buying a home. They could care less about money. They operate out of vibration. How am I vibrating right now?
Yeah.
Which if you think about it is kind of cool, because how many of us have gotten pay raises and pay raises and pay raises and like, in the end of the day, no matter how much money you give me, I don't like doing this.
Yeah.
Right. And our parents, especially the baby boomers, thought, you get this, you work hard, play hard. Well, a lot of us are like, why? Why not all one love? Why not love what you do? And then you get the money shows up.
Yeah.
So I think that's what the younger guys are like. So hold on. Bill Gates didn't obsess about money. He obsessed about his technology, and he obsessed about it to the point where he got it so good. And then somehow his bank account grew.
Right.
Like you said about your podcast, I want to enjoy it so it's not a job, and money will show up however it needs to show up. Yes. And that's what the younger generation is working with. And it seems like I'm having to fit into that while also keeping myself grounded, because good vibrations and gummies aren't going to keep my lights on. Right? Hey, Mona, come over and do this show. We're going to pay you in weed. I'm like, I hear you. And I like that you're thinking that way, kiddo. But yeah, that I can't put those gummies in my car.
Right.
It's not going to get there. I might want to, but so that's
interesting too, because we still have to draw that line with, like, we have our reputations, and I've struggled with this early on, trying to figure out when you give a financial break for a certain opportunity and when you don't too. And I really sucked at it earlier, because I used to work with a songwriting partner who was great, and he's a dear friend of mine, and he was more fiscal and I was more personal. So I was good at charming the room, and he was good at making sure we got paid the right way for charming the room. And whenever him and I split up, we're still friends, but we just took different journeys. And when we decided to go out on our own, he had to somehow learn how to charm a room and not be a jerk, because he had the fiscal. He could figure out the contract, and I had to figure out how to not be too nice and undercharge. I was underselling myself for a long time.
That's what we do.
It took me,
because we love what we do.
Yeah. It took a long time, So it's tricky, because then you got to figure that out.
Yeah.
When do you take that? I mean, they're still for the right gig, and I see this with some great players too. There's a lot of great musicians who, if they're going to do something in a big event, they better get their dough. Better get their dough. But at the same time, if they want to play like some original music or do something, they'll work for $100. They'll work for $60 at some dive club on that Sunday, though. Even though they'll demand much more money that Saturday night. But so I like that balance, because then they're like, oh no, I'll play that piece of shit, that dive bar for $50 because they just want to have fun,
right? And because I choose to, especially with your business, it's becoming similar to mine, right? Your business with Napster shifted everything into cost, the whole cost ratio of everyone. Me. Or I want luxury services without luxury prices, especially with music, free, and then it really brought everything up into question.
Spotify has really changed it all too. Napster kicked it all off, and now Spotify's doing it, because even myself, since I'm not my CDs around the world, but I'm not world famous. You know what I mean? If I sold some stuff in the Czech Republic, I can say that, but I probably sold 7 units in the Czech Republic. But I can see that it's around the world, and that's what I like about the digital age. Is now I don't have to just sell it out of my car trunk like I used to. Everybody can hear it, and I could get these emails and these messages saying, somebody in Japan, and that's great, But the downside of it is you are not getting paid. Lady Gaga has to add shows because it's still not sales don't make the money that they need. Nobody. It's all the live performance.
It's full on production, and the difference between what requires you to have a finished product, from the writing of the song the creation of the music, the team to actually put it together,
right,
and then the team to actually produce it, fine tune it. So you're like, yeah, that level of money, time, skill set, mindset, no less, right? Because the piece might be coming from somewhere deep, right? That has you have a product now that you can, with love and grace and ease, you can have that keep going around the world. If we book you, I mean, how many times have we booked the Rolling Stones and you still want to hear all their stuff from the 60s, right?
Right.
The comedians, no one wants to hear someone's greatest hits if they're a comic.
Yeah, that's rough.
We got to always be doing that level of skill set. And what goes into making a diamond joke is testing the material in so many different platforms, because especially in Chicago, which is so beautiful, that's why we're generating so many comics. I'd say with ease and grace, 80% of comedy on the planet comes from the city of Chicago. It's 1 degree of separation, especially because of Second City. Right? Black rooms, all of that stuff. It just, you come through here at some point.
I don't know if I've heard the term black rooms.
Black rooms are like so for example, Robin Harris, Bernie Mac, these guys all came from up in the South Loop, and their tempo, their syncopation is very much like the Baptist church. So if you take a joke that you perform on the north side, west side, south side, you take it to South Africa, London, and England, and California. That particular joke is better tested in Chicago because you can do the north side, south side thing, and you can really see what works and what doesn't, because an all-white room, an all-white yuppie room is totally different than an all-black room, an all-black older room, an all-black younger room, because there's way different grace. Also, with black comedy, there's not self-deprecating work. You're talking about the outside world. You're not making fun of yourself.
Yeah.
Whereas in north side comedy, more so white comedy, they're longer stories, and you're typically picking at yourself. Like,
right.
So I'm single, right? A black comic wouldn't say that. Like, yo, you're single, right? It's obvious.
I never really noticed
this what
that.
you're wearing, you're single as heck.
What?
It's a totally different syncopation. That's why I'm saying the Chicago method of the hybrid of two, especially if it comes out of a white face like me. So when I talk, especially outside the United States, they're like, what is she? Like, what are you? Because you sound like the getaway driver of a heist, right? You sound like a Netflix special. But you're talking about subjects that are heavier, like, occupation, or I'm talking about femininity. I'm talking about some of the heavier stuff that you don't normally see in, like, your conventional white girl.
You have the edge.
Yeah.
You have a mysterious caramel color.
Yeah,
which,
right.
And then you have the education as well. So yeah, that does make you an interesting vehicle.
And right now in pop culture, Americans are synonymous with stupid. Because of our,
sure, yeah.
Right? Because of our president. So that,
what kind of bum rap?
So I'm part British. My grandmother's British, and I was in the UK in August dealing with some family stuff.
What is your background?
I know.
You're a lot of things.
So my mother was born in small town in Illinois, not far from St. Louis.
Okay.
Her father was a soldier and was in World War II. Found this cute little British chick, fell in love. He came home, and his lineage goes way, like, literally his last name is Nims, but it continues on to white side, so it gets real white.
Pronounce your last name again. I always have.
My last name is Aburmishan. That's my father's side.
Aburmishan.
Yeah, Aburmishan. So but on my maternal side, we've got my grandfather, my mother's father, goes as far back as the children of the Revolutionary War. This is how, like, it's like Pocahontas and John Smith. All right. Then we've got my grandmother, who's British, who at certain tea times, like, she's methodical in her Britishness.
Yeah.
So essentially, my mother is actually a child of immigrant.
Wow.
Because to be a British woman, you're considered a war bride in the 50s. You were, that whole era is different. So my mother grew up with an immigrant parent, just like I did. So when my mom and my father met, my father is an immigrant from Palestine. They met at Pita Inn. So if you're familiar with in Skokie, right?
Place rocks.
Right? In which right now, if you go to Pita Inn now, it's like the UN. Every color. Because right now, hummus is like in the national food.
Yeah.
So that's how my parents met, and they met in the 70s. And so I, too, am a child of immigrant and immigration. And so that's just been this conversation. But if you know global history, you really get, I am everything right and everything wrong with the world. Because the Brits, they were They were motherfuckers. Okay? They were. They did some stuff, and the Palestinian history. So when I sit and have just a normal conversation with someone who's British, they assume I'm stupid. I'm like, no, just because I sound like this, all right? Don't. And then I turn on the Chicago. I get real Chicago, right? Like I start, my MFs just ring the room. So.
Wait, how many languages do you speak?
I speak Arabic, English, and German.
Dude,
I know.
That's pretty awesome.
Well, it's a common thing. You saw, and I say it's common because it's hiding in plain sight, which is in the 90s when the economics were such that you could buy a ticket to visit your homeland, which could be Italy, it could be anywhere. Mm-hmm. You had a lot of the young Gen Xers were going to visit family around the world. So you had an economic structure where I'm essentially like a middle-class refugee. By 13, I was in the Holy Land. In high school, I was an exchange student in Germany. That's why I speak German.
Oh, wow.
Because the economics were stronger. You could buy a ticket, or you could be part of an exchange program for $2,000-3,000 for 6 months. Your kid could live abroad.
Let me ask you this: with your education, then how early did comedy come into the mindset? Because when you're studying what you're studying, you didn't do that for material, did you?
No.
Because that's a lot of work.
It's a good question. Where did comedy come in? Comedy came in because I was a fat kid in class, and if I made people laugh, I wouldn't be called the fat kid in class.
Okay. So that happened high school, grade school?
Yeah, I'd say right at junior high. Uh-huh. In 1 year in junior high.
By the way, you guys look her up. She looks great. So,
thank you.
Yeah, she obviously killed the fat kid, I guess, with, I don't know, with a treadmill or whatever you did, but you beat it. But you look great.
Thank you so much.
But at one point,
yeah,
you were a heavy kid, and then you use that. So yeah, well, I'm sorry. Go back to what age do you think you first started using the silly to kind of offset?
Well, so one of the things in my house, because there were so many people in the house. Mm-hmm. If I made someone laugh, they were paying attention, right?
Oh, nice.
If you make someone laugh, they're listening to you.
Yeah. It was a big family?
Yeah, we had a really big, there was at one point there was 15 members in a 3-bedroom townhouse.
Oh, wow.
So 15 people, which is a common conversation in the immigrant community. So if you made someone laugh, that means you got attention, number one. Number two, we were always busting each other's chops, which is a Chicago thing. If you're busting someone's chops, or if they're busting yours, that means they love you. Doesn't it? Like it's like a love thing. And I think it's just a Chicago, whether it's Chicago or it's a Midwest thing, when you're busting each other's chops. So there was that. Then at school, if you were the funny one, you were the class clown.
Right.
Right? You weren't the fat kid that was in the back. And what happened with me, and this is some of my own personal journey, is I always wondered, like, did I choose to be fat? It's a really powerful question. Did I choose that? And I look back and I was 12, and after school, I was on my way home from school, and one of my friends, who's tall, big chick, I think she might have been, sometimes when you look back, you're like, that friend I had, I think they were like a married wife. Like, how come? She was really big and grown up. I think she might have been 35, and really I was only 12, so I don't know. But anyway, so she's like, hey, Mona, come here. I'm like, yeah. She's like, I told your crush that you have a crush on him. Like, I told Johnny Jeremias, and that's his real name. I told Johnny Jeremias that you have a crush on him. And two things happened in that moment when I look back as an adult. Number one, she betrayed my friendship. Yeah. And she told my crush. Which is a big deal for a teenage, little teeny thing. But two, I said, okay, well, what did he say? And she's like, he said you're too fat. Oh. You're nice, but you're too fat. And from that moment on, and that's why I did a lot of my own kind of like self-reflection this year, is from that moment, 1 year I gained probably 65 pounds on a frame that is barely grown.
From that moment?
That was summer of like 6th grade. By the end of 7th grade, I wasn't able to fit in clothes. And 1 year later, I had over almost 100 pounds extra on me. So because when I remember, I go back, I'm like, yeah, she's right. Versus saying, you're bigger than anybody else, because she was huge.
Right.
And plus, who runs up to somebody and gives them bad news, girl? Like, what kind of friend are you?
Yeah.
Right? Why would you do that? But in that moment, I chose my weight loss journey. And in essence, me releasing the fat girl, having chosen her and loving her, and she's always with me because she allows me to see things deeper than just getting away with my looks. Because you probably have gone to high school reunions or something like that, and you're like, you went your whole life by looking good, and now you're trying to figure some stuff out, right?
Yes. Right? Yeah, it's weird how many of the good-looking people did turn.
See, when their looks start to go,
Yeah.
or they start to gain weight, they're trying to shove into smaller clothes, and that's like, I'm like, so for some of our Gen Xers and baby boomers, it's like, when are you gonna let go of being the high school hot lady? When are you gonna kind of grow into what femininity looks like in the
Yeah.
aging world? Like how are we showcasing what aging looks like when we're like looking at Instagram and you've got Kris Jenner as this idealized plastic thing?
Right.
Because what is that? Like, how do you look graceful in your aging?
Yeah, it's weird to see too. Yeah, it's strange because I think people are they're more, they don't want to be objectified more than ever before. Yet at the same
Yeah.
time, I still see a lot of hot people leading with the hotness
Yeah.
before their personality. And I watch some of these people and like, oh, you're beautiful, and that's all you're using right now.
Yes.
And what happens when that goes?
Yeah. And what are you radiating out?
Yeah.
Like, you've seen it probably, like, you've probably seen it on stage. You're like, yo, you have Madonna arms and you're probably 70 and you look hungry, bro. Like, you good. Like that Chicago thing. Hey, you good? Like, is
Yeah.
everything okay over there, buddy? You want to hug? Yeah, I'm going to hug. Let's hug this out.
Hungry? Is that what-
You look hungry. And you probably see people like me,
Yeah.
those of us that are on stage, and that's part of understanding humanity, is we see the patterns. You all in the audience, you see us, but we see there's probably 10 different types of people on the planet. And that's, I think, what Tony Robbins kind of, his whole business model is based off of, is you can kind of check the patterns. You're like, all right, you have issues with your wife, or, like, there's a Tinder date. And that's why when I come to a club, I come early and I watch the audience trickle in.
Really?
Yeah. I watch them from behind. I watch the waitresses making sure they're serving. I watch and in the UK, they say hen party. I watch the bachelorette parties.
They call them the hen party.
Yeah.
Oh,
I watch the skinniest chick in the room making sure she's not drinking too much, because she becomes the heckler. Once that alcohol sets in and she hasn't eaten enough that night, she becomes my problem. Right? So it's like understanding the masses, because I don't have the ability to drown people out with music.
How many comics do recon like that? That's interesting.
How many people are sitting at this table with you right now?
Because I have not heard
Yeah,
that.
no,
Everyone,
I do.
you hear about people living by their set. I'm going to go in. That's my set.
Yeah.
But when you're doing recon like that,
Yeah.
that just kind of puts you on alert mode. Like when you see who might be a heckler an hour before you're going to start, or a half hour before, whatever. Like, what does that do to your mind? Like, what do you do with that information?
Okay, that's great that you asked that.
Yeah.
Having come up in the Chicago method, as you advance, and one of the things in the States that they don't honor is that the MC, first off, is the most consistently highly paid part of entertainment, period. Because in the end of the day, people want to go to the Oscars, and who's hosting the Oscars? A comedian. A comedian can MC any type of event.
Yeah.
They're basically they're the conductor of the funny and the humans in the room. They're the mass manipulator. So if you're doing a corporate gig, they're making sure that, or you're doing a fundraiser where you have to talk about fundraising for orphans and refugees, and then you got a comic and you got a musician, you got an actress, that the MC is the one that can weave it all together. They're the consistent line.
Right.
In the States, we've devalued that, and the headliner tends to make more money than the MC, but the MC does all the work. And outside the US, the headliner and the MC make the same.
Oh, really?
They do. And the headliner watches to see, the good headliner watches to see what the MC's done. So the more MC work I do, the more I love it. And in black comedy clubs, the people would come to the show for the MC, for the consistent MC. So a lot of black comics that have gone on to get great fame, Dion Cole, Lil Rel, Bernie Mac, all these guys, they were house MCs.
Wow.
They could handle anything in the room. And if you went out for a Friday night, like, yeah, let's go to Jokes and Notes, let's see what's going on, especially because Lil Rel's hosting. Not like whoever's coming out of town.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right. So the MC had the most powerful role in the room, and they were able to play with, their own worldview, but also, the obnoxious person in the front row. So with that piece of information, what I do is when I go abroad, like when I was in Cape Town or I was in London, they were looking for an MC, or they were looking for a host and MC. So what I do is I watch the room. I see the geography of the room. So for example, in the one in Cape Town, where Shimmy works a lot, it's this long room with really high ceilings. And there's this big divider in the middle of the room where people go to the bathroom a lot. And if you're someone whose art is words, you've got to make sure that the person all the way in the back knows exactly every word you're saying, so they get the punchline. right? So I get there early and I see the dynamic. I'm like, okay, there's someone there. There's a guy with the wheelchair there. Hey, and I go and I talk to them. Hey, what's going on, blah, blah, blah. And I find out in the South African room that this one couple was in a wheelchair, but they were on the first date in 20 years. They had been high school sweethearts. They went on their journey and they came back for love.
Oh.
Okay.
All right.
I was like, good to know. So I talked to him like, oh, hi, welcome to the show. I'm going to be the MC. I know that you're in kind of a different section of the show. And also with high ceilings, laughs go up.
Right.
That's why a lot of comedy clubs have low ceilings to keep it going straight out so the audience gets the vibration of what's going on.
Sound in general, those high ceilings. Yeah.
Right? So I noticed that there's a couple from Michigan and all the way in South Africa. There's a bunch of students. There's a whole table of UN employees. And I'm like, okay, cool. You're from Mitchell's Plain. Da, da, da. All right, go. So then when I host the show, and there was a moment where we needed to give out 2 tickets to the next show. Who did I give it to? That couple in the back.
Nice.
That had, right? And I addressed that. And so it unified the room very instantly so that even if anyone came in and out to the bathroom, it was this unit and it was connected. And even the owner of the club was like, now that's how that's done. And I'm the first American ever to host that room. Ever.
Really?
Yeah, I was the first American to do it. Also, in a lot of environments, I'm the first American to do something there. I'm the first Muslim. I'm the first female Muslim. I'm typically the first Chicagoan. And I'm like usually the first female to do what I'm doing. emceeing like Top Secret Comedy Club in London. And when I do it, and I do it with that Chicago style, they never say all the way from the United States. They say, ladies and gentlemen, give it for the next comic coming in from Chicago. They're like, and it's got its own legacy of what that means.
It's funny how everywhere you go, though, you're like a walking, like at least 5 checks are just checked off. 5 boxes are checked off everywhere you go.
Right.
Man, that's fascinating, though, because it gives you like a part of the improv and the side of it that people don't think about, you know? And I do that with the singing. I watch the crowd and try to figure out what's happening. Lately, I've been doing this piano bar gig for fun. Mm-hmm. The Redhead Piano Bar in Chicago, which is this
amazing spot.
Iconic, you know, that's where Billy Joel dings, you know. But my problem is, when I first hit town, I used to do the Drake Hotel. I used to do like 8 p.m. hot time, you know, and you get there because I was hungry. I needed money. I needed all the money. So it's just dance, monkey, dance, you know. Well, do you know this song or not really? $50. No, we're going to do it for you. Do you hate this song? I do hate this song. Oh, here's $20. Oh, we'll do it for you, sir, you know.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, that's what you have to do.
Yes.
And you have to do that. So when the Redhead came calling, you know, the singing's treating me really well. Life is good right now. Mm-hmm. I don't need a piano bar gig, so I said no. But then the second time they called, they said, well, we want to try something different. You know, we're just doing piano players and singers, but now we want like duos or something. We just want somebody who can like in there and sing, and you can sing. I'm like, oh, thanks. But no, I just don't want to do the dance monkey dance.
Yeah.
And that's tons of respect. If that was my only job, I'd be hitting that hard. I would do every song they wanted to hear. You know, but I'm doing all right.
Right. But if it's not serving you, if you're not like getting any joy out of it. And also one of the other things I'm noticing is because of the way we're all consuming entertainment now constantly, like how many people have Netflix specials that really haven't earned them yet? You know, there's a lot of consumption of comedy.
The content, they want content and we need content.
Well, and so they're asking me to do shows that have a bunch of stuff on there. I'm like, you understand this is like the ADHD of comedy shows, right? You've got this person that's going to do rap. You got this person that's doing juggling. Then I'm like, come on, man. How about we just do a simple comedy show and not treat our audience like they have attention deficit disorder? Yeah. Let them focus on the words.
Everyone's quick. Well, it's funny. The third time they called, I said, well, here's the thing. Is there a dead night? Like, let me come in and let me do what I want to do. Mm. Let me control the crowd instead of them controlling me. And if it's a crowd that's overrun and they really need to hear Sweet Caroline, I will do it. But I'm just saying, let me at least try.
Right.
You know, how do I do that? And I know I can't do that at 8 o'clock. I can't.
Can you do it like on a Tuesday?
Well, they said, well, we go till 4 a.m. every night, or 3 a.m. They said, you know, the slowest thing we have would be like a Sunday, you know, like it's 11:45 start time.
Oh, wow.
You know, they said, now, it's not to say you're not going to sometimes get this big crowd and they're going to want the classics or whatever the standards are. I'm like, well, let me try that. So then now they start calling it Soulful Sundays, and they even changed the background music before they start playing like old school 60s soul music, and then we open up with like a Dock of the Bay. And the cool thing is the piano player performing, and they're always great, but they're doing, Living on a Prayer, and they're doing this thing. So then when I come in and I suddenly break out into like an Otis Redding tune, what's the first thing that happens is the whole room stops because they're like, oh, wait, what? Okay, this is different, And for them 80% of the time, I get to run that room, So now I'm doing it for fun.
Yes.
And that's I think all the performers out there, don't you feel like figure out what you love, see if you can do it for a living, if at all possible.
Yes.
And if you can, you might have to alter the path and alter what you do. I wanted to just make CDs and just do that. I wasn't planning on being a corporate singer or the way life is paying most of my bills now, but I love it. I love singing, So I had to make the adjustment, And then once I found the footing and the bills are getting paid, I do so much stuff for fun. The piano bar gig, that is my fun time.
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't do it for free. They pay me. But that's my fun time. I got this little unplugged thing I do once a week that's turned into a thing that makes money, and that's great. But I would do it for free. I hope none of those owners are listening.
And what's the feedback? Because I know that when we do something we love for fun.
Oh, that's an interesting question.
It really impacts the audience, huge.
Have you noticed that? Yeah.
Always.
When I do this podcast, when I do the other thing, any diehard fans will come and then they'll say, "Oh, well, man, now we've never seen you smile like that." And then they start the thing that wasn't built to make money starts making money. The smaller shows, more people are coming out and it's turned into a thing because I think they're seeing a side of us maybe that they don't usually see, that much joy. I don't know. You've noticed that though.
Absolutely. And so one of the things that I do is, are you familiar with the term Olay? The term Olay,
I always think of it like with the bulls.
Yeah, that the bull. Also, flamenco dancers say Olay. And Olay came from the North African, the Moors, when the Muslims were in North Africa, and then Spain, because the Muslims and Arabs were in Spain for 500 years. Olay is a Spanish term, but its history is in Ya Allah, meaning, whoa, the divine is in the room right now. What I just saw, a flamenco dancer, a beautiful piece, a comedian that just went off the cuff. Like, there's been times where I'm like, hey, what's up, Nigeria? He's like, oh, how did you know I'm Nigerian? Right? Olay. Olay means I've surrendered Mona to think and strategize. She's in the back looking at her phone. What you're seeing on stage is merely the frame cut out, and I've surrendered my voice to you, the divine. Use me. So there will be stuff that comes out of my mouth that I never knew possible. And if it comes in a form where you're actually singing, you know the words, there's this extra energy.
Right.
And that's to me Olay. So that's to me is when it's a spiritual thing that, especially if you can't put your finger on, you're like, I don't know what the difference was, especially because comedians, we can do 3 shows in the same city, in the same venue, with the same jokes on the same night, and have 3 totally different turnouts. Because it's all about the chemistry in the room. And those people will never come together again. So if you're able to generate that, and if you see that on Sunday night, there's something special, well, also think about the variables. Like, and I always say my favorite day of the week is Tuesday. Tuesday is your life, all right? Tuesday is your life. Whatever you're doing on Tuesday, that's your life. And if you don't like your life, then do something new on Tuesday, all right? Because you can't complain about it being,
Brilliant.
hump day, or it's like cool, jazzy Thursday, and Fridays, everyone loves it, and everyone's bitching about Sunday, and no one likes Monday. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But Tuesday's like, I'm going to 7-Eleven to get my coffee. Like, there's the,
that is brilliant.
Right?
That's brilliant.
So whenever I produce shows, I produce them on Tuesdays, and I acknowledge the people in the room. Thank you. You chose live engagement.
Yeah.
You could have sat and watched a Netflix special, but you can't outsource what I just did about the fact I called out that you were Nigerian, Like, you feel seen in such a screen-based life. Everyone's gotten so isolated. A lot of, especially men, and men are loving being seen again. The 2 of the top-rated things when you're looking for something to watch, it's probably like something around food, something around sports, and something around comedy.
Right.
In a screen-based life, everything, there's so much significance in the world. But comedy, you can just laugh about the fact that I got a weird parking spot, right?
Yeah.
Because everyone has that normalcy of life and feeling seen person to person. There's a chemistry of the human. There's just that human interaction that's beautiful. And as a live performer, I'm sure there are times you're like, yo, I'm vibrating like really high right now. I think I'm going to be up all night. Like,
yeah.
Right? That adrenaline, that dopamine, that all of that.
We live in a very charmed, lucky world. Us and I guess, actors on the stage live in a world that is kind of going away. And that is, it used to be if you were home and you weren't watching a play or a comedian or a singer, you're watching TV, you're watching the big screen that's in your living room, But now, unfortunately, we live in a world to where everybody else's day, they don't have to just be in the living room. Everyone's glued to the screen because it's in their hand.
Yeah.
And we live a charmed life that we're in a room and we can call out the people who are looking at theirs. I constantly call it out.
Always.
Like, who are you texting right now? Right now? Like, I'll do that in the show.
Good.
I know you can.
Definitely. Give me the phone. We're going to call him right now. Come here. Is this your booty call? Let's do it. Let's do it together.
So we live a charmed life because that is going away. I saw some kind of some YouTube video, something talking about the effects of the phone without any words, and it was just showing everything. It was showing it was through the eyes, I think, of a young woman, and her there she is on a bench with her boyfriend looking at the phone. She's like with her parents looking at the whole world is looking down at a screen. So we live in a lucky world because if you're going to come into our room to see us, you're not looking at the screen. Maybe you're putting it up so you can show it for later.
Would you see? Do you see that a lot in the front row?
I see that a lot.
They're sitting here recording your entire. I'm like, dude, why don't you be present, bro?
Yes.
Like, why don't you just enjoy and use that old school data, like that old school terabyte memory thing called your brain. Use that.
Your terabrain.
Right? Yeah. And
I got one terabrain. I got one terabrain in my hard drive.
Because we're merely mimicking. The phone is mimicking the human, not the other way around. And the one thing that I feel like the endangered species in the room, if we're not cognizant, and maybe that's what the Russians picked up on, is the human imagination. The human imagination. Like, did The Simpsons predict Trump, or did The Simpsons create Trump?
Oh, shit. All right.
Like that, the subconscious, right? Like if I say orange apple, orange apple, orange apple, right? And you go down the street, you're like, dude, she just said it's an orange apple. How did I find an orange apple, right?
I don't know, but I just didn't know OJ had anything to do with Trump.
You're right. I did cover a lot of subjects on this podcast.
There's a lot of Simpsons out there. You mean the show, right?
Yeah.
No, but seriously, it's funny because I'm guilty of it too. If I see something really good happening or the sunset, like, oh, look at the,
Yeah.
And now the selfie thing I use for promotion. It took me a while. Instagram,
Right.
I got the Instagram game. I have it down now because I'm like, oh, I'm doing this, and then it's over. But I have started to notice, I focus real hard on putting the phone down. And for a while, if I was walking, the dog, I'd still have the phone out.
Dude, you should have there should be a whole funny running series
of
you and this dog.
I should cut, the dog's been, well behaved because the dog added stress to the podcast.
Absolutely.
Because they're like, oh, we love the dog. I'm like, I got to walk the dog when I have a show. But then they're like, oh, and then again, oh, we love the dog. Yeah, but the dog barks during the podcast. I'm like, so I'm putting it in the basement. Oh, don't put it in the basement. Like, it's just,
what? The dog's not paying rent. You know that, right?
It's not paying rent. And it's still an animal. It's not mean to put it in the basement.
Yeah.
No, but what I know is walking the dog. Okay, here's the one thing where it gave back, because it's one of those things where maybe if I'm outside, I'm looking at whatever. I'm looking at my emails, or Facebook, or whatever. And at some point, no, if I'm going to walk this dog, I'm just going to walk the dog, shut the phone off.
Yeah.
And is it weird? Do you ever have this feeling that when you put your phone in your pocket, as soon as you do, and especially if you're outside on a nice day, you hear sounds that aren't sounds, like the actual colors and the sunshine of the world has this like.
Were you taking some gummies before you went for that dog walk?
No gummies.
Okay.
But I'm serious. Like, talk about a natural high. Like the world. Like we're so not used to seeing it anymore without this thing in front of us, that when you finally stop, it's even more beautiful than it was before, because now it's a special delicacy that we don't see. It's a delicacy for the eyes and the ears and the senses. It's weird.
I think also because the fact that you're a musician, and I'm sure that there's times where you probably see light in different musical harmony.
Sure.
For me, Yes, I do notice that, like the eyes, especially since I was born with such bad vision that I wear contacts. I really do value my eyesight. I mean, at 8, I was having to wear bottle cap glasses.
Okay.
Right? So I do value that. And I really do love to find funny. Like, there is so much funny crap. When you watch people, that's why I'm the only one, typically in a group of people, I'm usually the only one watching everyone else. I'm like, oh, what did you just do, bro? You know you just ran and tripped, right? Like... Or when there's been times where when I was working at the airport, I would, and this is something that really helped me understand humanity is humanity, no matter what part of the planet you're from. When I was working with the German airline, we also took care of the Japan airline. And one morning, the Japan airline was clearing out, and I saw a Japanese mother and her 2 kids were coming down, through that passport control. And the little brother ran up ahead, waiting for the little sister. Right? And if you have siblings, you know what's probably about to happen. The little brother knew the sister was running full blast to catch up with the brother. So he hid, put his foot out, and she face planted. Right? And I'm like, don't. Right? And the mother was like, and all of that wasn't in Japanese.
Yeah.
That was humanity, right? And if you're looking at your phone, you're not going to catch that stuff. But it really, there's beauty in the human animal watching them. And that also ties to like the weight loss is what was my personal belief system about myself relative to my relationship to humanity, that every time I would get to my most beautiful self, I would fall in love. And when the love when my partner didn't see me the way I know I am, boom, I started gaining weight.
Really? All right. You know what? I'm gonna. God, you know who you are. You're so smart. But then you got the Chicago vibe. You're like a Chicago Joe Rogan or something.
I am.
You are. You're very similar, but like
Thank
with
you.
more of like he doesn't have the edge in his voice, even though he's an ass kicker though. He could
he is.
beat up a lot of people.
You look like you could be his brother. You know that, right?
That'd be awesome. I'll take that. Ever since he started shaving his head, Oh, but I gotta back this up because I have to have you on multiple times.
Well, if you know what we'll do is if you want to talk about the weight loss stuff, that weight loss stuff is for anyone.
I want to take a broad scope on just you, like from that end as well as your writing and the journeys.
Okay.
So obviously during that, the being heavy helped to segue into this ability, and then you're even somewhat nurturing it, not for professional reasons, but for personal reasons in a way. The way we all do, I think, when we're making people laugh. I did a little stint, and my comedy world is more in the world of improv.
Yes,
and that's what I do with my Unplugged act.
Good.
A third of it is improving with the crowd, and I'll do the making up a song on the spot once
Good.
I find out who you are, But I had a very short career in comedy writing, and I took the singing and the improv thing. Instead, I had to write like a 1-minute piece on the radio for sports comedy.
Oh, that's epic. And that's the trend, by the way.
And it was on the Loop, and it was on Danny Bonaducci's
Really?
show, and I was underqualified. And I know that dude is a train wreck or in many ways. But there are many ways that he is not, and he trained me on the air.
Oh, lovely.
Which turned me into a little bit of a whipping boy because he'd let me know how bad it sucked.
Okay.
And then it all worked until the final day that I truly not only wrote a joke correctly, but delivered it. He was telling me how to deliver it. And the first time that I felt like I had it dialed in, I sat down and I'm like, okay, I think I got this. And, I'm ready for my segment. And of all times, the guest he had sitting right next to me for my first time really feeling about this minute that I felt good about was George Wallace.
Oh!
Sitting right next to him. I'm like, oh no.
Oh my gosh. One of like the anchors of comedy.
And George Wallace liked my bit. And then he extended my bit, ended up being 6 or 7 minutes because George was playing with me. And then it's just... The world you live in, like it's everybody. I feel that when people talk about singing, like, oh man, everyone wants to be a singer. These days, I think everybody wants to be a comedian. It was the most magical thing to write something and build it and then deliver it and find the delivery, And now, again, I do it more in improv. When I MC, I'll write some jokes, But the world that you live in is just to fine tune it and to take life. It's the most amazing thing to me and to everybody. That's why Netflix comes out with 17 comedy specials, every month.
Yeah.
But so to back that up, when you're a kid and you find the funny, when did formulating the funny become an idea? When did the professional idea just tickle the brain? Like, when was the first time that happened?
Well, I want to put a pin in your comparing what I do to improv, because I'm not sure everyone.
Oh, no, I think it's totally different.
All of your audience doesn't necessarily understand that in Chicago, it's this like north side, south side.
Yeah.
Sox, Cubs, improv, stand up, battle, right? So I want to put a pin in that because I want to come back to that. What really got me into stand up comedy to today, the reason why I'm sitting in front of you today is on Christmas. Yes, I'm a Muslim. We celebrate Christmas because Santa was Muslim. I don't know. My sister.
So he was a Muslim black woman.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
With left-handed.
And he was left-handed.
Right. Do you know 50% of U.S. presidents were left-handed?
Really?
That's why I'm fascinated by them.
When I was just because I was stirring the coffee with the left hand. What was it? What's
you
the thing
see
with
the
left
world
hand?
from a totally different perspective. You add color and context. Like, you would be the highlighter of my hair because I'm all one color. You're the highlight. Left-handed people are notoriously geniuses. If they're forced to write with their right hand, they're actually put on them bipolar disorder and depression. The left-handed brain fascinates me. Oprah's left-handed. Obama was left-handed. Look at all the visionaries in history. Just Google how many left-handed people.
Okay.
They always see the world from a different perspective, and I like, whenever I see a left-handed person, they're fascinating.
Oh, wow. All right.
So that's a separate subject. But my sister said, Mona, you need to go into comedy. And I had just gotten back from Namibia. I was doing my master's in international development, looking at post-apartheid urban planning.
How old were you?
I was 29.
You were 29 when the thought was suggested to you.
And I'm like, but wait. And I had already lost the weight, so it wasn't about my image. But this is the belief system I had to break, which is, comics are dumb. Actors are stupid.
Sure.
But really, comedians, and you're seeing this globally, and that's why the United States American style of comedy, because comedy's existed around the world in history. But the American style is the modern day philosopher, the modern day court jester, and a celebrity all wrapped in one yummy little bite size.
Yeah.
So that's why when I work with people, I'm like, why do you want that mic? Because you're going to impact the subconscious. So if I tell a joke, what I like to hide in there is a bit of truth and education. So when you leave the club, if one of my jokes is talking about my pops, I put in the joke, make fun of my dad, but he says, Mona, we are Arab, we invented algebra. How could you not be doing good in school, right? And he goes on, but you leave, you're like, oh yeah, Arabs did invent algebra, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that we are dealing with such a narcissial society, the ones that are going to have the great impact, and you're seeing it in Ukraine with the president or prime minister he's a former comedian. You're going to start seeing comedians and people in leadership being comedians because we're the only ones that can be so transparent and fearless at the same time. We could talk about, okay, and what? What are you going to do about it? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And because in order for us, like with the modern day American celebrity, you have to be so transparent from your past because Americans love to build up their superhero and then tear them down.
Right.
Right? I'm waiting for them to bring down the Kardashian empire. But that probably because it's so big, it could affect global economies. You've got how many Kardashians are millionaires and one is a billionaire. You don't want to bring that empire down. It's going to impact some like worker in China.
And they're so dangerous now because their celebrity status is so big that instead of like bringing them down, it'll just make the rest of the world try to do whatever they did.
Yeah, like you want to climb to the top.
Yeah, that's a monster, you know. But I want to stay on track with your journey though. With
so then what happened?
29 is later in the game for
totally.
you know. So I mean, because when she said that,
I was like, huh?
Yeah, I mean, had you done any? It had just been because at dinner you crack her up, like it was based on that.
All the accents I do, like that was my thing. Is I always made people laugh, and I would use all these accents. And so what they did is they literally forced it on me. They got me for Christmas. They had gotten me Second City a gift certificate for improv, then another comedy writing workshop at Second City, and then one of the Chicago Anna Balaval on WGN. She had done a comedy class for women. That was led by Cameron Esposito, who's a very famous comedian now. And it's called FemCom. And it was a 5-week course where it's all for females. Right now, Kelsey Huff with the Kate, she teaches it. And it's for all women. And it's a safe space where you work on stand-up. And there's only really 2 levels. And at the end, you have 5 weeks and you do a show. And that's you have to do a show.
Wow.
So that's what happened.
Okay,
And
so you got that. Now, first off, they give it to you, and then were you a little reluctant or very nervous, or were you like, oh, no, let me just see what this is about?
I was terrified and angry at the same time.
You're angry.
Think about that. Like I'm like, I know I'm funny, but like this writing a joke thing, like real talk, like Rob, I'll bet you can write a better joke than I can. Because there's different types of comedy. There's the comedian who is more personality based, who's a roaster. Like one of the things a lot of people don't know is Live on the Sunset Strip with Richard Pryor. He filmed that twice. He wasn't someone that always wrote jokes. Once he went through his awakening, like he had done all the Rat Pack comedy, and then he had his awakening, and then he really evolved into a totally different type of comedian. And once he performed, he had like bits, like, or bullets of subjects he wanted to cover, and then he would just go, right? The first time he filmed it, he was so high. It was horrible. And he felt such shame. He said, bring them all back, and I'm going to do it right. And what you see now of Live on the Sunset Strip was the second time he did it.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So there's a lot of comedians who, once they've gone through their awakening, like even Louis C.K., he was your classic brick wall, he had an HBO special, your classic within the first 10 years. Then he had a kid, and it changes your life. And he was like, my kid's an asshole. Like, then his whole like persona changed. So I began this journey, and I'm like, oh, like, how am I going to write a joke, man? Like, you know what's weird about taking out the... I'm like, all I know is you're an idiot. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's what was me getting comfortable in. Am I going to be a Seinfeldian comedian where it's set up punchline? Or am I going to be a Bernie Mac comedian where I can spend 30 minutes talking about the word MF, you know?
And you have the attitude and the cognitive ability to be both.
I do.
You know? I
do. And if you use one method to honor the other, then you're looking at now more the Chicago style, where you're like, what's your philosophy? I have this thing about identity. So that's your basic philosophy, and then you can go off. Or I'll ask a question. Hey, anyone in the room who's mixed, like half Dominican, half peanut butter? And they're like, oh, I'm half so-and-so. And it's usually like, all right, somebody was on vacation or someone's trying to stay in the country, right? And then I come back to me. So I go into the audience, and then I come back and I riff. And so that's the thing so one of the things I wanted to honor about you is the style that you're messing with is actually, you're innovative in stand-up, because we're watching so much stand-up. We as humans are picking up the pattern, and it's the improvisers, where if you can use improv and stand-up together, and that's why I took on the Riff, which is a stand-up comedy show where you pull a suggestion out of a bag and you have to riff on some random subject live on the spot. So that comedians of all level, really, there's no one can bring their bits in the room. People are so present.
Wait, that's a thing?
Riff. Yeah. So, we can talk about that in a second. But being able to riff on a subject, that's what George Wallace did. You could have talked about oat milk, and he could go off for 15 minutes because that's wisdom too. That's all part of being a really good comic, is cognizant of the world around you, and you can't rush wisdom, which even though young people would love to, being able to riff on it is what's going global. And that's the American style is making a shift, so that if you're just your one-lining comic, you can catch the pattern too fast. And you're kind of done with a one-liner by 10 minutes. You're like, you're annoying now. What else it's like a one-note performer.
And two, the best compliment I ever got was when I was doing it at one of the Unplugged shows where the improv thing kind of happened, and they were saying, these people are only going to hear this time, But the scariest thing that ever happened is somebody actually paid me to do that. And we were in Hawaii. I was on this super huge gig, huge Fortune 500 client. I was there to sing.
Like an Eyes Wide Shut party? Is that what you're saying?
with even more money.
Yeah, nice.
And they said, oh, you know what? We have our top earners, this big event. And it's a guy from Iron Maiden or something who now is into improv and speaking to crowds. And he was great at it. Who saw that coming? They said, we want somebody to open up the whole thing. We want like a 5-7 minute piece. And then my booking guy said, well, you guys really like Robbie. You keep flying him all over the world. Like, have him do it.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, he's funny at the party. No. And he's like, no, he does it. He MCs. So they had me spend 8 hours with their marketing people.
Oh, brilliant.
And they had and I had to play with graphics behind me, but they let me write jokes But then, and I was scared of this because I'd done it a lot, but I never did it at this level for money, like this kind of money. And what they did is they wanted, write us some jokes. So I was able to write jokes. Good for them. They gave me the people that they'd like to be called out, which was great. And I was able to write jokes for that.
You're like a corporate roaster. That was great.
Then there's the script, there's a teleprompter, and then it's just joke. It was great. Joke. And then it's, okay, just riff on this. On the teleprompter. And that scared the crap out of me because I do it, but it's never been like, and now do it now.
Yeah.
And now go back to script. And now improv. And it was all in the teleprompter, like go, where it's just an empty,
and how did it go?
It went really well. It was one of the most amazing accomplishments of my life. Which is funny because I'm doing these big singing shows out there. You got
to start adding in the stuff.
Because
musical comedians that add music in their set.
So I do that. I write the song.
Crush.
I do the improv song. That's which is a funny thing. People don't get the improv thing. The crowd doesn't because there's always that one girl, and I bring up their friend. So give me your best friend. Who knows you the best at the table?
Yeah.
So they give me all the info. We're usually doing like a reggae thing, and then I'll make up a song about them.
Love that.
But then the girl there's always that one girl that'll come back 2 weeks later, and she'll bring like her boyfriend or her sister, and they're like, that thing, do it again. Mm-hmm. Like you can't. I don't. You know what improv is? Like, I don't remember. They think
that's why you got to follow me around the world. But I like that you brought more money. That's good. Yeah. Like that's what you should do.
But that hybrid thing was interesting, and now I'm trying to push it and I want to do it more, but so scary too at the same time. But
it's so fulfilling.
Yeah, when
it's so rewarding. Like especially since one of the things about humanity is once we're in fear, we're not creative. But if you pull that fear level back.
Yeah, I was obsessed.
Good for you.
I was in Hawaii and not relaxed at all because I was leading up to that damn thing.
Yeah.
And then it was like, when it's 8 a.m, so it's not even like performing hours.
Right.
Oh no. But I mean, it's so interesting that talking about something like that to you stylistically, you're so educated on the format, a little more so. I think you're a student of it than many, and you're able to demographically point something out. Like there's a Chicago. I didn't necessarily ever think there was a Chicago style. And then when you start talking about kind of the UN version and the way you can get all that the full world scope in one town, like I never thought of that before. And especially when you talk about like the South Side, like it's almost like a church cadence.
Yes.
Man, as soon as you say it,
yeah.
Now that's all I hear
sense,
when I think
right?
about. Yeah, it's really like so. You naturally, because you were an educated person, you applied that level of learning to the comedy. So let me ask you this. So now you're taking the courses, which in a way has to be good because you're an academic. Mm-hmm. But how hard was it to make that hilarious person at the table shake hands with the academic? Since you weren't a professional at the time, you're diving in.
That's such a good question.
How did you make the marriage between the two?
That's such a good question because my academia, my studying was superseding. And I was overthinking fear.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like if you study tennis, at some point you're like, because there's so many scenarios that could happen right now. I don't know what, like, versus just being.
Yeah.
So I grew to be a better comedian. I would really say I was at a disadvantage by having studied comedy before I started it. Huh. And especially as someone who's teaching stand-up comedy too, and who's teaching it for kids, that whole subject is about empowerment of voice and feeling safe speaking your truth. But if you want to be a comic, you got to go to an open mic. And you got to get on stage because the most terrifying thing will be over with by the time you come see me. And so the environment contributes to the material. And if you're too timid or scared or worried, because then you're not paying attention to the waitress. You're not paying attention to the guy that's from Nigeria. You're not paying attention to all this because you're worried about your set. And if you get on stage, you'll be one thing. But because the audience has been consuming so much comedy now, they can smell BS.
Oh, wow.
They can smell fear. And so you're going to get some charity laughs, or you're going to get something that a lot of people don't understand the difference between genuine, connected laughs where you really resonate with me and I resonate with you, and uncomfortable laughter. Amy Schumer's built her career on uncomfortable laughter.
Yeah.
And it's also translated into who is she as a public figure. If at night you're saying, I don't even care what happens. I'll wake up with an STD. I don't care about my body. And the next morning she's at a Me Too rally saying women's bodies are protected and I'm like, what did you say last night?
Right.
And what are you telling your audience, right? So there's me being able to perform on stage. The nut had to be cracked with my own family. And that's why family is so important in really understanding who you are is reflected in the people around you. So I was always going to have a global perspective because I grew up in a global society. I grew up in a global family where I was multilingual at home. Like, so being able to perform in Arabic and English it feels better than only doing one type of show.
You'll do comedy?
Yes.
Whoa.
Yeah. I perform.
There's so much to ask you. Okay. Well, wait. So how did you make the first connection? Like how, because it had to be a little scary and awkward. Like,
yeah.
How are you starting to formulate jokes early on when you're so new to this? And again, you're an academic who happens to be very funny.
Yeah.
Back then, you're not a professional comedian. How did you? What was that journey like? Or like, what was it like when you were writing those first jokes? Like what?
Terrifying.
Yeah.
Because
how did it come out?
It came out like
because stylistically it must have been totally different.
Yeah, I think it started off with evidence of like the gym, like that guy at the gym that throws the weight down too hard. Making fun of him. So I would have a basic setup where I made an observation and I used 3 different pieces of evidence. The first 2 are usually true, and the third one is so absurd. And that's usually your more comfortable setup punchline.
And does that really fall into the whole like comedy works in 3s?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So if anyone who's listening, check out Judy Carter. Anything that Judy Carter wrote, she teaches you the comedy Bible. And it's like, how do you look at one piece of thing and you're like, all right, water bottles. Like, what's weird about water botters? What's hard about water bottles? What's scary? So you do writing exercise and you kind of get, all right, your philosophical statement and your evidence. And then you kind of flow with it. And then I would take a joke. Let's say I'd take the 5 minutes I had built. And it was really important for a lot of comedians is stick with your 5 for right now. Get comfortable, get that muscle memory down. Because wherever it ends up going on stage, allow yourself to go with it. Being so strict, I call it Seinfeldian, where it's mathematical and logistical. Yeah. It's too much of a box. There's been times when I did Carnegie Hall, I allowed myself to flow, and I got a tag and a punchline to a joke I had been doing for 3 years because I trusted myself to flow. And when you free flow, and I'm not sure if really when you're singing, if you're singing someone else's piece, if you're allowed to just free flow or if it adds to it or not.
I found a sweet spot so that I can make it me, but I don't go so off the rails that people are like, that's not what Steve Perry would do. You know, so I found a way, and thank goodness it's worked for me.
Yes.
You know.
Well, that's where our sweet spot, that's where our bit grows. That's why when Jim Gaffigan produces an album and he just released an hour and a half an hour is on bacon, he can't do that again. But it probably took 3 years to build that bit where you're just talking about bacon.
Yeah.
Right? And that's why also having the family around you. So part of the person who helps him write is his wife. And if you can have your community support you, like if you're working on a bit, right? You're working on an observation. Like give me a good observation. Like, I don't know, what it was like to be a 70s kid, right? Like, here's a good, do you remember how many marshmallows used to be in Lucky Charms?
Yes, a ton. It seemed
when
like
we were kids, there were like 3.
Oh, wait a minute, that's right.
There was like 3.
It's
all
pretty
right?
chintzy.
It's got, now it's basically you're adding in a few oats because you got a bowl full of sugar, right?
Right.
You see? So if you have an observation and then mess with your family a little bit, kind of like throw out like, isn't it? I mean, don't be so like, contrived. But
I've got this damn dog.
That is, by the way, genius work.
I have a Kardashian on 4 legs.
Yeah, you do. You should do selfies with that thing. Put some lipstick on it.
That dog lives such a life. It lives such a life, by the way. So, by the way, we're going to take a quick pause because we have your part of, I want to just focus on comedy and your journey from this point on.
Okay.
People, this is your eye blink. We'll be right back. Boom, there it is. Eye blink for you. And what did we have? We had like 7 minutes, 10 minutes. We slow danced.
Lovely. Lovely. Hopefully you guys have changed your geography. I know you're laying down right now. Hopefully you're out going for a walk and walking your little dog.
That's what I like. People are doing such random people. I think a lot of people listen to me on their commutes.
Oh, yeah.
But then I have a lot of people that only have, they don't have long commutes. So they listen like 10, 15 minutes at a time. And, so
Go for walks.
Yeah. So
I clean the house when I'm listening to podcasts.
Oh yeah.
And I'll be like in the middle of cleaning the toilet. I'm like, what happened? Oh no! Let me stop and get these gloves off and tweet. Like, do they ask you questions? So people kind of chime in and be like, listen, go off on this. I want to know more about this on this subject.
What I mainly get is I get people repeating some joke that made them laugh, or I get these well-rounded. You know, I had this a friend of mine who happens to play sax for the Zoot Suit Riot guys. You know, Cherry Poppin' Daddies, and he's busy in the city and all that. And you know, people just say like, that was a bromance. I like the bromance, you know. With Shimmy, somebody called a singer, said her message, you know, she's like, I cried like 3 times. Like, what?
Yeah.
So I get these like more of just broad, you know. So I haven't. That's be interesting. People, that's an interesting one. You guys haven't done that yet. If there's anything specifically you want covered, email me that. So just a chatterfact@gmail.com. So yeah, that's something I haven't. Look at that.
Especially if you like live Twitter feed.
I haven't done that. You know, Twitter.
It's very hard.
I'm on it, but and here's what's funny. All right, how's your Twitter game?
My Twitter game is super extra lame because it overwhelms me.
Well, how does it overwhelm you?
I don't know if it's our generation where young people are like, no, they're always aware.
Yeah.
For me, the way I treat Twitter is understanding that Twitter is like a really big party and you're just coming in. Not that you're late.
Right.
You're just walking in and you're going to talk to the weirdo that's hovering over by the shrimp section. Hey, how are you? And you engage, right? Not that I'm the most important person in the room, but not that I'm not important. And that's what I'm trying to do. But I think I have like 4.5 followers.
Well, that's the problem. Like I didn't hit it hard, and I didn't know what I was assuming because the other mediums have been pretty good to me and they've helped. It's funny how much Instagram helps the podcast.
Yeah.
Because Instagram is visual.
Yes, people like pictures.
So it's so funny. Like, oh, that's a nice picture. I think I'll listen to him.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't make any sense, but I get most listeners from someone who scoped something on Instagram.
Oh, dope. Okay,
it's really weird. But and by the way, we want to thank you guys because I don't know who you people are. I don't know who they are.
Really? Would you like to know?
I don't know. Is that scary?
Yeah? No. Would you ever interview one of your followers?
That would be interesting.
Your biggest fan?
Yeah. No, because that scares me. But this is weird. You know, I had Adam Jacobs on, who's the bona fide Broadway star, was just on. And this lady who gives piano lessons to my daughter, who's also a theater person, said, I went to see his play, and I heard, that he was on your show, so I listened to the show. And then, this other lady who was, whatever, at some mom's meeting, there was a thing. She mentioned him because I said I was going to see him, and she said she heard him on a podcast. I'm like, oh yeah. So what was it? And she said, A Chatter Fact. And oh, wow, how do you know Robbie? She's like, I don't know Robbie. I just listened to it. And those people fascinate me. Like, who are you? How did you find it? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
So most of the listeners, I don't know who, but I don't know if I want to know.
Well, you know what? I think if your biggest fan, so like, let's say I was your biggest fan. Can I tell you why I would be your biggest fan?
Why?
There's something about you that I feel so connected to that represents me. You're also very likable, approachable. What I love that you don't do is, I was talking to this very famous blah, 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 You're just so engaging and you're so connected that if I was your biggest fan, I would be like, yay, he's interviewed a glass of water. I'm going to understand this glass of water better because the way Robbie interviews is he's so present. It's like my eyes would be in the room as well.
I'm going to hug you.
I know.
I'm going to hug you big when this is over.
You're welcome.
Seriously,
I got a sweater on. It's great.
Warm and hug.
There you go.
No, it's nice. And then what I do I like this whole. You should do one of these. You'd be a great podcaster.
Everyone tells me, and like you, I don't know, I'm scared. I actually am. I'm timid, but I know that I even thought of names. I thought of Mo You, because I can give you 10 minutes, especially with these young folks, like manners.
Yeah.
I could give you 10 minutes on manners.
You could,
how not to shut the door in the person's face behind you. Like, come on, guys, right?
You could do like a 2 a week. Just on your segments. I mean, you'd be really good at this.
Especially since I watch random stuff. Like, I spent 1 3-day stint learning about the Romanovs and the Russian Empire. Like, I needed to get the Russians. What's going on? Where did this start? And I'm like, if the Russians are listening right now, Yati Biai de Blue. Like, I love you. I get it.
Oh.
I get it. You guys have a huge landmass. You have to figure stuff out.
It's a lot.
It is.
A lot of space out there. I never really thought about all the real estate they have to deal with.
Telling you.
Oh, see that? They should like not get into like our media and voting stuff. They should just be figuring out how to work with all that land.
That's what I'm saying, right?
I mean, keep it real world, Russia.
Yeah.
What the hell?
Yeah.
No, the other thing I like about this is, and I always say, this is the first time I didn't say my tagline at the beginning. As always, these are not interviews, they are conversations. Holy crap!
Oh my gosh.
I'm overly comfortable with you. You see that?
Love that.
I wanted to get you on the mic like so fast.
We did. There was like really no
I didn't do my
intro.
opening tagline. Yeah.
Okay.
But I say that because since I wanted this kind of social thing to happen, I wanted it to be just people having a cup of coffee. So that's why I don't do research, and there's not going to be like a list of questions.
Okay, cool.
And the way it's worked out is I just enjoy this so much. But then my fans always will say, I didn't know that about you. I didn't know, like I'm sure someone's going to tell me after this, like, I didn't know that's why you took that piano. So it's kind of nice that we can just converse.
Because parts of you are coming out.
Yeah.
Like that one time that you
it sounds
did
dirty
that
when
one
you
thing.
say it that way.
Parts of you are coming out.
But either way, yeah, so it's the conversation, and you're really good at it. I mean, I'm having you back on possibly as fast as possible.
I'd love that.
Yeah, because I want to there's so much now that here you guys probably agree with me listening to this. There's so much about you that I've been able to experience that I want to delve deeper into, like how you got here. Because I think it's an interesting journey that you've taken. But again, I still want to get back to like joke one.
You want to know what joke one?
Do you remember joke one? I don't know if that's hard.
I do actually. You know what would be really cool?
Huh.
What would be really cool is remember back in the day they always had spin-offs. What if my podcast was a spin-off of yours? That would be hilarious.
I mean, I would do something. I would have you on. I would do yes, we could do that.
That would be funny. That would be really funny.
But I mean, I would do, as this thing is always a new person shows up and there's a conversation, but I would just do a 15-minute weekly podcast, just, hearing your thoughts.
Yo,
Like,
I got lots of them.
We should just shoot the shit for 15 minutes twice a week.
That'd be dope. Okay.
And now that I'm going to get emails. So
well, based
you guys
on your
might have
schedule,
seen something just build right now, people, because you know what we could do? We could do this. Listen, you guys are listening to like a business plan. It's just a meeting right now.
How do you think Rhoda happened? Mary Tyler Moore?
Yeah.
Like, look at all the spinoffs that ended up
Right.
going. Different world came from the Cosby Show. Bring up that stuff. But you never know.
A whole different world came from the Cosby Show.
Okay, so back to my first joke. My first joke was really talking.
By the way, stay tuned for our two-person show. Robbie Makes Mona Riff coming soon to podcast land. Now I've put it out in the universe.
Well, you know what? We could talk about the riff. Remember, I was telling you about that.
No, I want to hear about the first joke.
Oh, my first joke.
So
Okay.
I'm just pre-promoting the thing that hasn't happened yet.
So can I ask you a question?
Yes.
What's inspiring you to ask me about the first time I wrote a joke?
Well, I'm so fascinated by the combination of the academic suddenly has to apply, the professionalism and the plan to what was before a loose comedy. You weren't a professional comic, but you were a comic in a way already.
Yeah.
So I'm really, like I said earlier, the marriage between it. I'm really curious what the first formulated joke was, or how that worked out that very first time. Because let's face it, you were funny at home. You inspired them, so they thought, okay, we got to do this. We got to push her. She's that funny.
Yeah.
But then you were so smart. So those are two very different worlds when they have to collide. And I think it's just like for an 18-year-old or whatever, like the first time somebody's having sex, where it's just like kind of sloppy and slippery and trying to figure it all out.
And very emotional at the end.
Yeah, it's
But
like
I don't even know.
yeah, and you're like, I've read the books, I've seen things, I know what has to happen. I'm fit, and then you're like, and I'm young, but then there's all but everything's sliding around and weird. I would imagine the joke writing. It's just like you're just slippery, sliding, trying to figure out.
Plus, also the audience. It's such an intimate conversation with complete strangers that can't be rehearsed.
Well, that's what fascinates me. So you're by yourself, or are you? Like,
Yes.
Where are you writing that first joke?
I was always writing it in my head. So I think the really good first joke was I was writing about don't ever mess with white people's holidays. I'm half white, half Palestinian, and I say I'm white, like crystal meth white.
Yeah, you have a foot in each area though.
Like mac and cheese made from powder white. That's how white I am. Because in the States, we're like, I don't see color. That's what now I would say.
I don't see color.
I don't see color. Like, well, you gotta, because that guy's white who's Bosnian, and that guy's white who's Serbian, and they don't like each other. You gotta see some kind of color, kiddo. You can't be out here like, I don't know. You're gonna be lost. All right. But when I said that initially, I was saying, you don't mess with people's holidays. And then I said, I'm Muslim, but I was raised with a white mom. So we had Christmas.
Uh-huh.
And so then I give the example of how, like, sneaky little kids, you're kind of looking for your presents. And I looked and I found, not only did I find my presents, I found the stocking stuffers. And my mom found that I found the stocking stuffers, and I have never seen the devil's eyes until I saw my mother see me with a stocking stuffer, right? Oh, no. And then the worst, she came to hit me, and the worst to do is if you're getting smacked by your mom, to duck.
Oh, yeah, don't duck. Don't
you
block
gotta
either.
Take it. You gotta. And I was like, no. And she's like, whoa. And I'm like, okay. So then I thought, we were good. I thought we were fine. Uh-huh. She beat my butt, kinda, right? Because again, white people, like white Americans, don't do physical violence very well because they got something else. All right. So then I didn't know. I'm like, all right, we're all resolved. Everything's fine. Come Christmas morning, I come, traipsing down the stairs, and I look over. The stockings aren't there. There's no gifts under the Christmas tree. It's just my dad laughing at 6 a.m. saying, you pissed off your mom. She killed Santa.
No.
So she had totally killed off Christmas. And I'm like, I see you,
Psychological beating.
Yeah. So that ties into and I could now looking at that joke, and that's what's really beautiful about stand-up is you can take a bit that you did back in the day. And if you want, look at it. What does it say about now? And a lot of comedians start off talking first, and that's why a lot of young comedians talk about their genitalia, and why a lot of audiences are like, I don't want to go to such, it's vulgar. I don't want to go to that. And I get it. But if you talk, they talk in the beginning about themselves, and then their ring of conversation, once they feel safe, they start branching out. Right? And it also comes with wisdom. So I could take that bit now and look at what it's like to be the daughter of, my grandmother was British, and my other grandmother's Palestinian. If you know Palestinian history, you know the Palestinian state and country was given away by the British mandate. So trying to translate to these two, because they didn't speak the same language, was like a UN negotiation at 8. Right? And so that's one of my jokes too. So my comedy evolved as I got in front of different people, and I was able to notice things. And really impacted me was when I, for the first time, performed in front of the Arab American audience, because I had done a couple jokes like my dad joke. But by being in front of them, extra stuff was coming out of my mouth. And after I was done, I was like, yo, I didn't plan any of that stuff. And it just flew out of my mouth. Yo, there's something here. And so my career in stand-up went global right off the jump. I had barely been in comedy, and instantly I was in diverse rooms, having diverse conversations. And if you mapped up my career compared to any other comedian, okay, within under 10 years, I did global work. I was at Carnegie Hall. I've done Kennedy Center twice. I've done Comedy Central in Dubai. I've performed on parts of the planet in a short amount of time that comedians, the best known comedians in history with the best records, would literally have to go back in time to match what I've been able to accomplish in just under 10 years of holding the microphone. And I'm extremely blessed.
What was the first gig?
That I did that?
Yeah.
It was May 2010, and a fellow comedian from Detroit had come in town, and he didn't have a host. He's like, oh, you're local. You want a host? I was like, what? Host? And it was May 2010. I was like, okay. I was terrified, and I was shaking. He taught me how to host. Little key things where you move the mic stand so that you're connected with the audience. If you bring up the next comic, you say their accolades, then you say the name. You don't say the name.
Did he give you kind of a quick kind of...
Little bit. Or every time, because he was kind of a little bit of OCD. Every time I would come off stage, he's like, yeah, don't do that, do this. I'm like, okay. And I'd go back. Mm-hmm. And so I really, comedy, you get good on the job. Like you just do. You have to. If you have to be put open-minded enough, selfless enough, committed to the audience enough to be able to flow with it and leave your ego at the door. A lot of comics come in hard, and that's where your instincts about education, being so smart, can be a weak point because then you think you know it all. So I have to be able to put my ego every time to the side to learn something new, and really being so like trusting that the audience has my back, because midway through my career, I had to be okay with healing the fat girl in me, which is I was judged, I was made fun of, but because my school is so diverse, I was made fun of every type of person. So the rooms that used to intimidate me was all of them.
Jeez.
Right? It was, so we have the Arab community making fun of the fact that Meskin, he Mishim Jose, like, oh, this poor thing, she's not even married. What is she? She's out here like a clown, right? But the fact that this is such a thick Palestinian Arab Muslim community, battling with them, it's like the best boxing gym being in Chicago. Because outside Chicago, I slay.
Wow.
I slay. I slay with black crowds, white crowds, Israeli crowds, anyone. But the boxing gym is an unforgiving gym called Chicago. And it's beautiful, but at times can be so like dark. There are times where this morning I woke up and I looked at my phone, and this big gala event in the United Kingdom said they were going to buy my ticket, and now they're nickel and diming me.
Really?
And it's got me irked. It's got me, like, so when your community and the people you do work with want to nickel and dime you, they're nickel and diming the product. So do you think Domino's Pizza can negotiate how much they're going to spend on sauce?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like there's that, my self-worth. And the one thing I keep telling people is do not piss off the comedian. Because we're the ones crazy enough to go around the world in front of anyone who will listen and tell whatever our opinions are. And that's why the American style stand-up is a sacred luxury item. We must not forget freedom of speech is a blessing. It's something that our style of comedy really comes from the 40s and 50s. And if you know anything about the Miss Maisels and stuff, you had Lenny Bruce that was right here in Chicago from the Playboy Room. They were thrown in jail, bro. Like this is within the last 100 years. So this freedom of speech thing, and that's why Shimmy being on the show is so magnanimous, is again, they only just got freedom of speech in the late 90s. You have to get that.
She's referencing Shimmy Isaacs, folks, our South African guests from before. So life is good for Shimmy.
Yeah. She's doing
her pilots.
Her pilots are doing well. She's the first woman of color, first woman that's being able to get a lot of work accomplished within a very old archetype of white entertainment in South Africa that's now shifting. Right? Like they're superhero, and I'm surprised. Like we should put money down to see if Trevor Noah ends up becoming the president of South Africa.
He's got to be just
seriously. You have an entire industry that is going on YouTube, learning how to be a comedian so they can be the next Trevor Noah.
Wow.
And the United States is eating it up. So the number one product, I'd say, just like the Brazilians in soccer and models, is American comedy. The American comedy, like, again, I know an Egyptian comedian who's American Egyptian who's banned from Egypt.
Really?
Yeah, like you have to get it, right? You can't talk about certain subjects. There's certain things you can do in certain countries. So walking a very fine line and knowing that.
What got you to the point? What were you doing before? How was business before your first kind of international move? Like, so you were doing rooms. For how long before you got that MC gig that just kind of happened?
Like always felt.
How long?
I'd say I started working with a comedian. There was another guy. Being a woman who knows what she wants and knows how to do it, but doing it in the beginning, being vulnerable. You are vulnerable to anyone who tells you how amazing you are. And so a comedian, he said he was a comedian. He's like, listen, Mona, I really want to work together with you. I want to start producing shows. I've been doing comedy here in Chicago secretly for 4 years. Here it is, right? See how your eyes squinted?
Secret.
Right. So I've been kind of in the closet about my comedy passions, and I've been doing comedy here and there secretly. Well, whenever we would go to an open mic anywhere in the city, no one knew this kid. So secretly, my ass, you're lying, right? I had to learn that. You learn how to. I mean, I grew up in this in comedy. I grew up. I lived somewhat of a kind of a sheltered life with my ethnicity. So I was doing comedy here and there, and then within 6 months, we had produced Show Here, and I was able to honor a woman who had inspired me 10 years prior. So we had started producing shows very shortly. So 2010.
Wait, you're still new to the stage, but you jumped into the production side, like producing shows right away.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, I think that's tied to like when you're a smart kid and you end up in a room full of like Nimrods that are all getting high and drunk so that they can then perform. You're like, this is not my cohort, man. I have a master's degree and you can't find your whatever before you go to the so like I was dealing with kids, so that when I ended up producing my own actual show in 2015 to now, it's called the Comedy Bowl, and it's 4 comedians, and in the middle was trivia, and it was over at Diversity River Bowl. So I'm able to combine my 2 loves, which is intellect and trivia and all this other just information, this random knowledge I have about like the Isle of Man, I don't know, right? Or the Russians, and then comedy. So being able to have this hybrid is my production style is really like, because again, comedy in my belief system, not every comedian has this. Like there's a lot of comedian that want to be the next Eddie Murphy. They want to be the next so-and-so and so-and-so. That's not me. For me, I always thought that stand-up comedy, especially in the United States history, is synonymous with the most amazingly beautiful, digestible social activism. If you can hide the medicine in the food, and you can leave an impact on someone's subconscious, you're pushing the envelope of discussion. And all the great comics were. Richard Pryor was having heavy conversations about race, poverty, like all these other, and he's an Illinois guy, right? George Carlin, even though George Carlin's methodology was he would spend a year, he would write his show, he would memorize it to a T, and then he would deliver it.
Wow.
So he was giving a monologue.
Really?
Yeah. And so imagine you broke that monologue. Do you think he would be safe? I don't know.
Yeah.
Right? So it all depends on the type of comedian. Are you like, that's why I'm saying Don Rickles. Don Rickles, he could make fun of a housewife or a mobster or like, and that's why the court jester played a very important role in the royal court, because he was the only guy that was safe at poking holes in the integrity of the king, right? And everyone loved him, right? But if you mix in now the modern day philosophy with so much information being available, like you're an idiot if you haven't watched a documentary in 3 years. I mean, come on, or a podcast, for example, you're having heavy discussions. So when someone's like, I don't even, what's that? I'm like, come on, America, just, play a podcast.
Putting medicine in the food, that's so well put too. When did you feel like you found your rhythm? Because first off, when you were talking about your first joke, that was pretty heavy and bold for the first joke.
Yeah.
By the way, like you would think it'd be so much safer and lighter. Like it's funny that you like came out swinging right from the beginning. That was just you.
And I didn't add the end part and that's when I learned about Ramadan.
Wait, what?
I forgot. That's the end of that joke. That's when I learned about Ramadan. Basically, I had killed off for Christmas for the whole family, and now we're fasted. Now we're real Muslims. And you're right. I did come out swinging.
Yeah.
And I think, honestly, Robbie, I really don't think the world has really seen Mona yet.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think they have.
Well, from that point on, like you workshop that joke, and then you kind of stay in that zone, like using life and using family. But I mean, it's because you're multicultural. You had so much to work with, and it was so topical right off the bat without you even trying to be topical. Yeah. Because it's so interesting because you're using what you had. Yeah.
But the problem that I was always facing, where my intellect came in as the block, is I was trying so hard to be liked.
Okay.
And so the people could see. So now that I've gotten I know this is going to be really crass, but now that my balls have dropped, now. Now that my lady balls have dropped, and I kind of don't care if you like what I got to say, but I'm going to come from love. I'm always going to bring love in the room and acknowledgement and honor. And you see how I do that recon. Mm-hmm. I come from love and acknowledgement. I never punch down. I always punch up. If I'm going to make fun of something, I don't necessarily make fun of the fat woman in the room. You know what I'm saying? I don't punch down.
Me too.
I empower.
Yes.
Right? And if you can empower someone and you leave the room always better than you found it, then it's all, whatever comes out of your face is going to be filled with love. And that's my voice.
Because you're so cognitive on this kind of line of thought, I wonder, do you think that's a generational thing? Because for the most part, there was a time where if I went out into the crowd to grab a lady's hand or anything like that, I typically, you try to do that to everyone, but more often than not, I would beeline it toward the heavier lady or the older lady instead of going to the hottest chick that everybody probably approaches at every show. I found myself doing that.
Yes.
And do you think that's a generational thing or a mindset thing? It's just, I related to that as soon as you said that, because I can't seem to just come down on somebody at a show.
I think it's because you love what you do and you love people. You really like, there'll be a show like I'm like, all right, everybody, look at the person next to you and just do me a favor. Look at the person next to you and say, damn, you look good. And then I'm like, ready, 1, 2, 3. And then I'm like, listen, if it's the same gender, get over that because it's 2019, like we're going to do it. And so what happens is especially if tables don't know each other, there's like, damn, you look good, right? There's a love in the room.
Wow. Yeah.
There's acknowledgement in the room, right? And like, even if you probably have some yacht, look at this guy here who ain't got anything. He probably got a bus pass. Just acknowledge when that love's in the room. And right now, I think they're loving it even more, not just because I'm putting it in there, because the environment is such, we need it.
It's toxic out there.
We need to know that Trump is not just our representative of one kind of American.
Yeah. And I've noticed that not only is it, everybody keeps talking about how, and you guys know I don't like to get political on here, but his presence, the fact that it's kind of unlocked some downsides. And I'll tell you what, maybe it's not all what he wants seen and shown. Maybe he didn't want the Klansmen to suddenly get a voice.
Right.
Maybe he didn't. Who knows? I mean, can I put all that on him? I don't know the dude.
Yeah, no.
I could tell you what it looks like,
Yeah.
But what the sad thing is, the fact that there is a little bit of a meaner, uglier world and culture that's been coming out of this thing. I'm seeing people who've always appeared to be nice suddenly getting a little nastier.
Yeah.
And like, oh, you had this ugly thing in you. Is that woke up now? And maybe they're not as bad as some of the folks we're seeing, but still seeing these toxic sides of people that I didn't think of as toxic before.
Yeah.
It's like, man, is it just because this tidal wave
it's
is happening?
Economics. You see it in history. You see, when you go in and you promise, like if I went into your house and I said, listen, if you decide to write with your right hand from now on, that you're going to get an extra, you know what? I'm going to make sure you get an extra 100,000. Wouldn't you start writing with your right hand?
I would write so much with my right hand.
You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So like if I, and then I go off, I'm like, just what's this guy? You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that the guy is a product of our society where he's your classic showman. You go to Barnum and Bailey. He's the guy who sold the snake oil. Like, he's just telling us what he thinks we want to hear. And that's cool.
Yeah.
But like I said, in my journey with comedy, I had to really be comfortable with all types of humans. Mm-hmm. If I was in yoga class and I was judging all the 4 women in the front because they all had Lululemon and I couldn't afford even my Target clothes, what is that saying about me? I got a belief system about money, right? Yeah. So for me to really not have Mona on stage, for me to really come from pure love, that's why I do the meditative things I do before I get on stage. That's why I'm like, Olay, I surrender my voice, whatever's to come out, to you, the universe, and I go free. Because if I bring Mona on stage, Mona has seen some stuff. At 16, I was looking at Dachau, concentration camp. Mm-hmm. I've been under occupation. I've seen bombing in front of my house. I have seen and learned and know. There's times where I'm like, I know too much. That's why I'm like, hey, what's up, Russia? Just in case they're listening. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know if that's our generation, but again, when you see a teacher, and remember that teacher McAuliffe, she was half Arab and half American. So there's an identity of myself that's reflected on the TV screens all around the world that really could make you not want to look. But when I just sit and I talk to some random guy at the bus stop, and I'm not even taking the bus. I'm like, hey, how you doing? You look like you're eating, is that Cadbury chocolate? Yeah. Can I get a piece? Sure. And I'm like, hey, so we have a conversation because he gave me a piece of chocolate and I broke that wall. That 4th wall for real now is talking to other humans.
Yeah.
At the airport, the guy that's in front of you at Starbucks, say, hey, how you doing? In Chicago, we're a big, small town. Do you know how many people I say, hi, hello? They're like, oh, hello. Today, a guy who was installing ADT was so fascinated by the fact that I said hello. We had a full-on conversation about the rain.
Really?
Do you know, like, I'm not the same because again, that's an African proverb. The souls need to acknowledge each other. If you ever taken the train regularly, there's a sadness that comes over you with everyone is not acknowledging each other's presence. Wow. Souls need to talk.
Yeah, souls need to talk.
Or listen to Cheddar Event.
You've dropped at least 3 or 4 potential Mona book titles, I feel, in this episode. If anything, if you got anything out of this episode.
Would you hold me accountable? Because it's not easy being up here all the time because I think I should be doing more.
No.
When I do, and I don't know if that's our problem too.
What do you mean accountable?
Meaning like, hey, where's that book title, buddy? Hey, what's up with that podcast? So that you hold me accountable or your listeners hold me accountable because I'm keep thinking I'm supposed to be doing the next thing.
It's tricky.
It is. Like, how do you stay focused on doing one thing when in our society we're like, okay, you need to do a podcast, you need to do a book, you need to come up with your own cereal, you need to,
Do you know what I did just this year, which is interesting? I think our lives are very lonely.
Yeah.
You're sitting here in my home. You know I have a family.
Yeah.
I'm a very lonely dude. Yeah. Because half of I tell people, I feel more like a truck driver than a singer half the time. I do 200 shows a year.
Wow.
So I'm spending most of my time sleeping, catching up on sleep. And when I'm awake, everyone in my life is not awake. Yeah. And I'm in cars and I'm traveling, So it's just interesting that we kind of have that life. And one big mistake that I made was what I was starting to do. It's not like, when you're a kid, you're hanging out with the wrong crowd. I wasn't really hanging out with the wrong crowd, but I was hanging out with the wrong people for me. And what I was doing, not like I was with this, I wasn't like driving with someone and like, oh, no, put this mask on. Like we're going to rob a bank. It wasn't like that. But what it was, man, I haven't had social contact in so long outside of my audience.
Yeah.
And I love you guys at every show. You're the best. But, as far as just anything outside of that. So I'd hang out with either a band member or somebody else that, oh, this person is here.
Yeah.
And I need a person.
Yeah.
So that's who I'm like spending an hour conversing with, But the thing is, what I started to notice is like, oh, this didn't go well. Yeah. I didn't enjoy this. Maybe I enjoyed half the time.
Spending with that other party?
Yeah. And then I go home feeling worse than I did before, even more in need. Yes. So what I did this year specifically is I started cutting ties with people that were becoming toxic or and it's not, and I'm not bold enough to say like I'm all perfect. If they're not good for me, I'm obviously not good for them either, And I've only been hanging out with people that just feel special. And it's so funny that we're talking about the multitasking thing because as soon as I started doing that, I got back into writing a couple more songs. I wrote, produced, and acted in 2 short films that are in post-production right now.
Oh, beautiful!
More is happening now
because you don't have. It's almost like energy vampires that you're not allowing anymore. Like definitely your protective aura. And shout out to your wife, bro. Like real talk. Like she radiates love.
Oh man, that's beautiful.
Like really, when I can't remember what event I saw her at, and she radiates genuine love, and you can feel it in the space. So as someone who lives a vampire lifestyle, I mean, again, they often say nothing good happens after midnight, and that's where we live.
That's where we live.
Right? Whether it's a comedian or a musician, I mean, whether it's just a whole dark world, to be able to stay pure and vibrate love and come home and spread that with your family, it's a sign of both the family that loves you and you reciprocating that love back.
That's the other thing I started to notice is like if I hung out with somebody who ended up being more toxic or something, but just because I had nobody to hang out with, I thought, I got to stop that. I'm hanging out with this person just, and then not only would I be unsatisfied, but I'd wake up and I'd be a grumpier person here.
Yes.
So now it's just really evened me out in a good way.
Absolutely.
With a lot of love, and that's the thing, because I want to be a loving person.
And you need to. It radiates off stage. If you don't, whether you're a leader or you're a musician or an artist, what you do off stage impacts what you bring on stage. And there was a very good comedian, epic comedian named Godfrey, and we were having a conversation in a very short period of time backstage. Do you know how much time and money these guys spend on their own mental well-being? whether it's the vitamins they take or the Bikram yoga or this journey, this like
a lot of them have
self-discovery.
therapists, a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
And in order for us to do what we do and to be solo, to be able to do it and connect, the soul having to connect with its equal counterpart, that's I'm inspiring you, inspiring me, inspiring you.
Yeah.
We need that. And we need to know like, okay, yes, thank you. And I'm choosing not to be part of this. I get it. And like, there's some comedians, like I used to say, if some of these comics had just gone home after their set, instead of spending the next 3 hours getting high, drunk, getting a DUI,
right.
maybe they wouldn't, when they get their success, have to cut off their wife and all their kids.
And to be honest, it doesn't even have to be like, as far as like maybe not hanging out with certain people, I'm not even saying like it's, these people are so bad.
Yeah.
Or, this is going to take me. Like sometimes it's just, I don't really vibe totally with this person, and I don't have time.
Yeah.
I only have time. If I'm going to take this precious little amount of time, it's got to be somebody that I vibe with 100%,
yeah.
Because
time is the only thing that's a non-renewable resource.
Yeah. So I don't know how that's been working out for you, but it took me a while to figure that out, to like, let me just deal with this week I'm lonely. That's it.
Yeah.
This week I won't have that person, but you know what? Better that than just hanging out with somebody that's not worth my time.
Yeah.
So I had to come to terms with the loneliness and be okay with it. Podcasts help.
I can imagine.
Because I listen to them all the damn time, But then this obviously helps,
Yeah.
But I mean, it's interesting. Once I came to terms with that, it became easier. But then I'm like, oh shit, I have a lot more time. I can write this thing now, and so inspiration. I don't know if you ever run into that, or if trying to like find more time to even be lonely because it just worked out that way, instead of like being sad that it's been a lonely week and you haven't had any quality time with anybody. Instead, somehow flipping that like, oh wait, I just gave myself a rest. I didn't even realize life is telling me, here's your rest. So use it.
Yep.
Be happy. I'm a singer. Be happy that I'm not talking an extra 2 hours to anybody. Save it. You know what I mean?
I'm very cognizant of my mind real estate. So
real estate.
Yeah. Like if I'm driving down the street, like I'll say, oh man, I'm so grateful for da 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 da.
Wow.
Yeah, you gotta occupy that mind real estate, because if that mind real estate goes off into wonderment and worry mode, the human mind is awesome. Like we have the ability to make ourselves sick with just, excuse me, with just an ill thought. You can go off. How many times have you realize you're like, I just worried and made myself sick.
Yes.
Because of my mind.
Just
so you know what?
Negative.
Yeah. And that's really a lot of the work that's coming out in terms of mindset, skill set. A lot of these life coaches are all talking about like, really, where is your mindset? What's the intention? So in the morning, like, what's my intention for the day? And today was a powerful one. Today was about my worth, because of getting that text from the United Kingdom saying that they were nickel and diming me over this ticket.
Sure.
Right? And I'm thinking to myself, how am I still here having this conversation about this ticket, man? Like what I'm going to bring you to the millionaires in the room, and you're nickel and diming me. And then I'm like, no, ain't going there.
Wow.
Right? No, I'm not going to go there. So what's my intention for the day? Today's the day of worth. And then really the thing that I latch on, and you probably can appreciate this because you have a child and I don't. I don't have a husband, I have a child. So there are times where me being 40 really pushes up against this mold that the world thinks you should be by this age, right? So what I step into is like, you know what? I'm going to tap into my Fisher-Price life. I'm going to pay my Fisher-Price bills. I'm going to have my Fisher-Price keys. Because when I was a kid, I used to want to drive a car so badly.
Yeah.
Like I would parallel park my chair in my desk. And the teacher's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know. My dad's a cab driver. I don't know you're supposed to do this. Parallel park my desk. So I thought, you know what? When I get in my car today, I'm going to drive it like a fit kid, or I'm going to drive it like 14. When you were 14, you wanted to drive.
Yes.
I mean, like, oh my God, stop. Look both ways. If you could bring the joy of a child at play, or the excitement of growing older that the teenagers have, watch how awesome your day is.
Yeah. And somehow we're told to like stifle that as we get older, and then we kill the kid. And
yes.
I love the fact that you're feeling that space though, that because we all have that empty space, that empty time, and it's just too easy to go dark and negative and think about I was doing that last night. I don't even remember what I was thinking about, but I remember, feeling like bad for like an hour.
Yeah.
The fact that you take the space and then you force it into like, well, it's like you're taking a corner of the room that is your mind, and you're like, well, I could put some flowers there.
Yeah.
Before anything else, before it gets moldy, before bugs show up. Like boom, you put a flower vase there.
Or you start filling it in with all those crime specials I've seen. I used to study all these serial killers. I could fill it in. Not to mention you're in Chicago. The first serial killer was here. Yeah. You could go off on all these tangents that are fact-based.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Fact-based. So filling it in. Also, one of the things being an Arab and a Muslim, oddly enough, a lot of the religious texts have vibration. Like instead of saying God, you can say Allah, like the vibration is higher. So there'll be times I'm like, Allahu Akbar. And now granted, I know everyone on the radio right now, or the podcast can get nervous because I said Allahu Akbar, right? But the vibration of it, like what are words I can say that are high, because like as I generate laughter, that's ha 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 ha, that's a high vibration. And that can impact the vibration of love, isn't it? 528 hertz. Like, what are things that I can do to fill upstairs so that the circus is quiet? Like this circus upstairs.
That is so great, man. That's a life lesson for any profession. That's a life lesson for any human. Fill the space with smiles before anything else can get there. Man, I like the way you think.
And if you get knocked off your block, how can I add play? Or how can I get love to this? And one of the great things is if you're in a situation, and I hope everyone listens to this, if this situation especially with a Chicago temper, if something clocks you, think to yourself, if I was writing for a sitcom, how would this be an episode? Like if you love Friends, the time that the one where Chandler gets in a fight with a Whole Foods bagger.
Yeah.
Think about how can I turn this and turn it into a sitcom. And as soon as you do that, you actually start making yourself laugh about the fact. I once went head to head with a bagger at Jewel. Now, granted, the poor guy with special needs, right? And he was fighting. He's like, no, I'm the bagger. And I'm like, yeah, I know, sir. I'm just trying to help. He's like, I'm the bagger. And I'm like, this right? my South Side temper, my bully came out, right? No, he's not acknowledging me, blah, 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 blah. I'm here to help him. I'm just trying to help. And I'm like, wait a minute, but he's actually the bagger. Like, that's his job. My tag doesn't say Jimmy the bagger, right? It says Mona the Nimrod comedian that's making fun of the world. Fair enough, buddy. I was like, fair enough. You're right. You are the bagger. Like, if you could flip it from if everyone could walk around the world with my job being a comedian, it might help everyone. Just find the funny.
Find the funny, man. That's the job. Oh, that's the world. Hey, where can people find information on you?
I'd love it if people hit me up on Mona's Pics at Instagram.
Mona's Pics.
Yeah, MONASPIX.
MONASPIX. Mona's Pics. At Instagram.
Or you can go to monacomedy.com. You can Google Mona Comedy, and there's another chick. She's quite obscene. I'm not her. I'm the chick with the cute curly hair. You can do Twitter. Let's try to see it. That works with Mona Comedy.
Oh, dude, to step back to how bad Twitter. It's so glad. I'm so happy that you're bad at it too. Because what I did was I had already done other stuff and I had a fan base, and then I thought to myself, people think of me as this witty guy. Apparently, man, when I get to Twitter, it's going to be I'm going to say something. All these followers are going to happen. And like nothing happened.
It's like crickets.
Nothing, like 3 times. And I just assumed, like I didn't understand the hashtag thing either. So I just thought if you say something witty, somehow like the whole universe, like, hey, I think somebody said something witty. Like they could smell it. Like what was that? I just didn't know. Yeah. And then I just didn't bother really going back. And now, and I probably should.
Well, don't ever do anything because you should, because I'm trying to go back to letter writing. Like I'm in prison. Hey, here's my address. Write me a letter.
Oh, that's beautiful.
That's why Amazon, I think, has kicked off, because people love to get packages. We feel special.
You know what? You're right. That's true. Amazon's the only thing that's keeping mail alive.
I'm telling you.
Yeah, because I don't look at anything else but what Amazon brought me.
Right.
I don't care about anything else in the mail.
I walk down the street. If I see someone get an Amazon package, I'm like, oh, someone loved them. Like, it's a care package. It's probably just printer cartridges or something, you know? Oh, I wish I was them.
Well, now you people know where to find this incredibly funny, cognitive ball of woman.
Thank you.
You're great.
Thank you.
You were great. Like I like your energy and everything that you're about is great. I need to have you back on because there's so much more I really want to talk about the joke writing technique. I want to talk about And you book people too, so
Yeah.
And now can that be found on your website?
Hit me up on monacomedy.com or mona@monacomedy.com. I'm teaching kids comedy workshops in different parts of the world.
Wow.
We're doing a lot of stuff. So just really hit me up on any of those platforms. So,
and you can find out when you're in town, everything. Your schedule is up on there.
Yeah.
Because this thing gets listened to like years. People binge the show now.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, that's why I tell everyone, like, don't give me your date. Sometimes I get a call like, hey, man, I'm doing this thing in June. Like, that kid doesn't.
Yeah.
People are listening now to the shows from 3 years ago.
Love it.
Yeah, so people are Netflixing this podcast, which is kind of cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's been cool. But anyway, man, I love you.
I love you too.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Robbie.
Oh, no. Say so long to Mona. And we're going to have her back real soon. And then who knows? Maybe we're just going to build a quickie show or something. Again, dirtier than I planned. It's all...
Or the spin-off. Like I'm always trying to get people to spin things off.
Really? Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
Plus, I don't live too far from here.
Really?
Yeah, I live on Addison.
Oh, at the very least, then we should just like meet up for coffee more often.
I like that.
All right. Well, one way or another, something's going to happen, people. So look for that. And now you've met her. I know you love her. I love her. So there you go. Enjoy your month. Enjoy your week. Enjoy your day. Go out and find your smile. Bye-bye. That's good, man. You give good talk.
Yay! I give good talk.
You do. Welcome to my life so far. You'd think by now I'd be a star. I may be long-winded, but hey, there's just so much I have to say. Maybe lick your lips when you're hungry. Maybe drop your head when you're sorry. Maybe shake a bit when you're worried. That's just